what is the Leslie matrix in general? We cannot only make this model work for that particular birds, could work for any population model if you focus on the aged structure. That means the transition is triggered by the natural age progress. So now we're going to make this model more generic. Well, what's the difference? You don't have to have a maximum life of 3 years. You can have a maximum of 100 a year, let's say, with a human being. If you want to study for the world population model, you might need to extend it to 140 years. Maybe somebody live this long. And so we typically say, okay, I get x1 goes to the next stage, x2 goes to the next stage, x3, and then xk plus 1, and all the way to the xn. Those are the states. So in this case, our n equals in the whatever number you want, but it's finite anyway. And then our transition, same. You just have more transitions. Natural age transition, P1, P2, and then you call this as a PK, and the last one is the PN. So that's the age progress. P stands for progress. Well, then, of course, you have a new population born. This, you call it F2. But how about if the new baby also have baby? Well, that's possible. You can call it F1. And then have F3, Fk, and the last one is Fn. So how many transitions we should have? Maximum, we have 2n transitions. If you consider turtle could live to 160 years, your n is going to be 160. You're going to have 320 transitions. That's too complicated. We're going to look at another type of model in next lesson. We really don't want to get this big number in reality. But the bottom line is finite. So this state machine, or say state model, we also in some book call it finite automata. That's a more professional terminology. It's finite automata. Well, then, even you have more states and more transition, but the relationship is the same. Let's look. We already drew that. Let's look at the relationship. So your population model is a vector of a time t. And this vector could have S is the longest, the maximum age. So this will be a vector of S variables. And you can write it down into S by 1 column. Well, let's see the transition. The first transition is always the hardest one. But if you understand, nothing different. It's just count all the mothers. We only consider female population anyway. And how much population contribution it equals the population of the first year mothers, the eggs, it less divided by 2, by the way. because we assume half are female. That's the F1. It's the birth rate divided by 2. And then you count the second year animal and second year for quantity to female. And they keep going to the contribution to the oldest female animal, birds. But in reality, you might have a bunch of zero. For example, the new baby won't lay eggs until a certain age. You can put this 0. There's nothing wrong for putting the 0 there. It could be 0 here. And some birds may be too old to lay eggs. You can put a 0. So in most generic case, the newborn species comes from all the contribution of different age. That's the only long equation involve all the variables. And the rest is all natural age progress. And look, I stand for the age I minus 1 to I group. If I equal 3, means the age is from 2 to 3 years old. The population of age I comes from the population for I minus 1. Or you can write it down another way. I plus 1 comes from the population for I. Then you have the PI. The same way. And after the new breeding season comes, the population at the age. And then you look at the transition happened from T to T plus 1. Simultaneously, the age from I minus 1 to I. As long as you understand that, you're good to understand the equation. What's this P, I minus 1? Survival rate. Not all survive. Somebody died. You always need to consider the mortality. Well, how many equations we have? We only know now we have S many variables. Then you expect S many equations. Now you can't. I equal 1, I equal 2, I equal 3, all the way to the I equal n. Of course, you have n equations. So we got this, and we have all these equations. Well, if you have trouble to follow this n, you back to the older one. Let n equal 3. You have 3 equations. What I'd like you to pay attention is the first row is full, but the others have a bunch of zeros. And then we can summarize this into a matrix. And all I need now is write as the x t plus 1 equals this L Leslie matrix times xt. Well, this matrix is very special. Have quite a few names. First, many zeros. We call it a spicy matrix. A lot of research is going on. How do we compute this efficiently when you have many zeros? And the second, this line, we call it a subdiagonal because it's right behind the major diagonal. You only get this line, no 0, and this column, no 0. That's the characteristic of Leslie matrix. If you study for the aged structured group model. All right, and then, so what we have is this definition. What is a Leslie matrix? Leslie matrix is a matrix like this. Do you have to use this for population? No. any matrix, if your transition like that, is called the Leslie matrix. But the Leslie matrix fit perfectly well for our aged structured population model.